Again, this month was so packed it took 2 videos to cover my favorites.
I can't stop.
These are my favorite metal albums of October 2023, and we're starting with Wayfarer and American Gothic. Denver has some of the most quality US metal acts per capita, and this black metal crew is just one of their many great exports. Channeling sounds of the old American West, this album is equal parts spurs, chaps, and corpse paint. Never before has a slide guitar sounded quite so grim. Listening to this, I feel as if I'm riding on horseback through a hot and dusty desert canyon, and despite that imagery being about as polar opposite as you can get from the icy roots of the genre, somehow it fits perfectly. Pair this with Black Braid and Panopticon and you've got the perfect USBM triple feature this year. Then we have Autopsy with Ashes, Organs, Blood, and Crypts. Another legacy old-school death metal band makes the list, and frankly, one that tends to be among my least favorites. But I gotta say, I think that this is easily one of their best albums. It's in the top 3 for me. This is a D-beat-infused death metal album that really does sound like a pack of infected feral creatures biting at your heels during a 70s psychedelic nightmare of a bad trip. Honestly, the songwriting is fantastic in general, with even the doomier tracks working for me, like the incredibly ominous Will of Entrails. They really pull out the earworms on this album with creepy melodies that slither deep into your lower brain, and great pacing to keep things interesting. I didn't need another Autopsy album 2 years in a row, but honestly, I'm glad we got this one.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Then there's Stortregn with Finitude. I've spoken before on how much I love the Artisan era when it comes to smaller labels consistently putting out some of the best albums in the genre. Stortregn is just one of those talents, with them having actually been around since 2006, with Finitude their 6th full-length record. Expect a truly raging fusion of technical death metal, melodic death metal, neoclassical, and black metal. And with many of these tracks also running closer to 6 minutes, there's more than a little progressive influence on the songwriting as well. I'll admit that I've always felt like the vocals could be a little bit stronger and more dynamic, but listening to Xeno Chaos should be enough to prove that the guitar work is beyond reproach. Seriously, go listen to that track and tell me that's not enough to win you over for a full listen. Then we have Bragging Rights with Orphan Source. Just 9 months after coming seemingly out of nowhere with the Dower in January, this UK union of progressive and sludge is back for more. I'll admit that initially I felt like maybe this was too much too soon, but a few tracks in I was once more appreciating the very Gojira-esque tapping riffs and bellowing mastodon vocals. There's just so much potent emotion behind the music, with tracks like Burn Bright sounding like a veritable waterfall of sorrow and rage. I'm also partial to Tickling the Dragon's Tail and Get Down, which both sound like they could have been right at home on From Mars to Sirius. Once more, be sure to check this project out because it's been one of my favorite underground gems of the year.
Come on, what are you, chicken?
Then we have OWDWYR with Receptor. This trio really gets nuts with their particular recipe of technical death metal, progressive metal, and grindcore, and with influences ranging from Carbomb and Flesh God Apocalypse to Radiohead and classical composers, you know that these tracks are going to get wild. From straight barn burners to more complex and introspective arrangements to a sick saxophone solo on Lagos, everything is fair game. And as if that wasn't enough, expect guest appearances from Naveen Kopervice of Entheos and Animals as Leaders, Kenny Grohowski of Imperial Triumphant, Kevin Paradis of Neobliviscaris and Benighted, and Alex Cohen of Contrarian. Just be warned, this album is dense. Like, I felt kind of overwhelmed the first couple of listens, but peeling back the layers was a very rewarding process. Then we have ANGELUS APATRIDA with Aftermath. I'll admit that I wasn't familiar with this Spanish thrash band, but they've been putting out albums since 2006, and this new one is a pretty strong effort. Tons of great guitar work with memorable riffing and pounding drums that really got my head banging with tracks like Scavenger, Snob, and Cold. Some pretty varied guest appearances here as well, with Jamie Jasta, Warcry's Pablo Garcia, and Todd LaTorra of Queensryche. There's also more than a little groove metal influence, sometimes drawing comparisons to everything from Lamb of God to Soulfly. In particular, Guillermo's vocals do at times remind me of Max Cavalera. Unfortunately, he does also do some of the Yarlier stuff, and I know regular viewers are really picking up on how much I just hate that, because it's coming up more and more. It doesn't get too bad, but these moments do end up being my biggest detraction from an otherwise solid record.
So close.
Then there's Farsoth with Morbid Symphonies. Combining bulldozering HM2-driven death metal with a hardcore spirit, this Swedish band is Entombedcore to the max. D-beats are once more the headbanging cheat code alongside massive walls of distortion and rebellious snarls. This really does feel like the perfect midpoint between Bloodbath and Harm's Way. Some of these menacing guitar melodies would also be right at home on an At the Gates album, as with tracks like Nothingness and Infernal Bondage. If I could make one critique, I do think that a bit more vocal variety would make the overall runtime more engaging, but even as it is, this is some truly bodying violence that I could see appealing to fans across genres. Ooh, then there's Mouth for War with Bleed Yourself. Just when I thought I heard all the best new metallic hardcore bands out there, this Colorado quintet found their way into my inbox. Just their second LP, and already they are about as brutal as this genre can get. More than a few of these songs were easy new additions to my gym playlist, and I can already tell that the gains are gonna be huge. Just absolute violence coming through in these vocals. We've gotten some real crushers this year in the genre, from Harm's Way, Jesus Peace, Chamber, and more, but honestly, this is right up there on the same level, and I'm sure as hell adding them to my list of bands to watch moving forwards. On the complete flip side, we have Mercure with Spine. Eclectic Danish musician Amelie Brun is back with these sultry vocals like a mist drifting over mountaintops. She's been through quite a few transitions over the past decade or so, starting in pop music before going full black metal with Mercure in 2014, and now settling largely into more of the folk-centered tradition of albums like Bergtat. Mausoleum and Folkesanga in particular abandoned any semblance of the harsh side of this genre, which left me feeling curious whether that trajectory would continue with Spine. And aside from the occasional distortion and scream here and there, it seems clear where Amelia's passion and strengths ultimately lie. No complaints either, because as much as I enjoyed Meredith, the stunning atmosphere here speaks for itself. Then another surprise here, we have Wrathion with Becoming Nil. Some of my favorite moments with this channel have to do with discovering bands I'm not previously familiar with, and this US project fits that bill. This is some gnarly and superimposing black metal with a death metal twist, and some seriously infectious D-beats for good measure. The vocals remind me of Enslaved, but the dark nihilistic tone and menacing guitars are far more in line with the likes of Watain and Inquisition. And the final third gets surprisingly melancholic, which, while not my favorite portion of the record, really shows that Wrathion may have more to offer than even initially meets the eye. Then we have End with The Sin of Human Frailty. The return of this ravaging supergroup featuring current and ex-members of Fit for an Autopsy, counterparts Shai Hulud, Reign Supreme, and more. 31 minutes of wall-to-wall D-beat headbanging and pulverizing breakdowns, totally on par with the debut, but also throwing in a few tricks here and there like the more industrialized Thaw. More of that, please. I recently featured this band on my best modern metallic hardcore groups video, and they continue to keep it at 11 with this sophomore full length. This is the sonic equivalent of being shivved from all directions. You could use it to rescore the prison assassination montage from Breaking Bad, and it would fit perfectly. Then we have Go Ahead and Die with Unhealthy Mechanisms. If you enjoyed the recent Cavalera Sepultura re-recordings, chances are you'll enjoy this as well. This album definitely utilizes the same sound from the production right down to the choice of distortion. The difference is that this is a much more groove and hardcore focused outing. Definitely music with headbanging at the forefront when it comes to the songwriting. Very simple but effective, while also throwing in some pretty sick leads and solos on tracks like Drogo Cop. I do think that the first half is a bit stronger than the second, but it's all a good time. And then, even though it's just an EP, my favorite album of the month goes to the Callous Cowboys with God Smiles Upon the Callous Cowboys. When I see a star river, such history. I've been a massive fan of this mathcore crew since 2019's Die on Mars, and their evolution continues with these 3 songs. They are the masters of genre melding, with Pushing the Pink Envelope alone representing quite the gauntlet of styles from the Dillinger Escape Plan to sparkly synths and pulsing electronic beats. Then there's the sort of Glassjaw and Let Live meets the number 12 Looks Like You, Waco Jesus, complete with silly Ghost Hunter music video. I can't breathe this Always love their sense of humor, in addition to their massive talent. And then possibly my favorite title here, Designer Shroud of Turin, throws in some seriously chaotic saxophone, a little bit of rap, and a touch of flamenco. Seriously, the band outdoes itself every time and continues to prove that they are the heirs to now largely vacant mathcore throne. Y'all check out this playlist for plenty more of my favorite metal albums of 2023 by month, and again, let me know your favorites down in the comments. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.